Got a large expense coming up, like a family vacation or travel to a friend's wedding? You aren't alone. This is super common in the summer, so keep listening to find out how your favorite money best friends deal with this issue. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittne Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Hey, Lisha, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I love most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians and other medical professionals. Discounts on disability insurance can range from 10 to 40% depending on your situation. And there is now an A-plus rated carrier offering up to $10 million of life insurance without lapse. If you are very healthy with limited to no medical issues, approval is likely in 5 minutes. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs at www.pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018.
Hey, money best friend, we want to hear from you.
That's right. We need to know a little about you to improve this podcast and ensure we give you the best content possible.
Are you a wealth-minded doctor like us navigating the challenges of money and medicine, or are you in a totally different field?
Are you in your early 30s like me or a bit older like Brittne?
Hey, I'm not that old. If you wouldn't mind, head over to the podcast show notes, click the link for the survey, and kindly fill out this super short 6-question survey.
Based on your answers, we will tailor the podcast to fit your needs. Thanks in advance for filling it out, and don't forget to leave a review.
We appreciate you.
All right, we are going to get things started with our Life is Lifing segment. To be honest with you, Brittne, I'm still recovering from Mother's Day. I think I mentioned before that May is like a tough time for my wallet. Both of my brothers, I have two older brothers, both of their birthdays are in May. They're a week apart, not even a week apart, like 6 days apart. Well, they're 3 years apart in age, but their birth dates are 6 days apart. Let me clarify. So their birthdays are very close together. Then there's Mother's Day. And then inevitably in the month of May, I am booking travel, usually for either my own vacation or to go visit a friend because I got invited to another wedding or to a baby shower or whatever. And so May is usually like a tough time for my wallet. I'm still recovering and I'm trying to plan in advance and save in advance, but I'm spending the money a little faster than I'm saving the money. So, it's a little money confession. I'm trying to figure out the best way to sort of navigate this tough time for my wallet, if you will.
I hear you. I wish you great success in that endeavor. Maybe in January, I need to create a new savings account that says May, savings for May. All right. Well, Lisha, you kind of mentioned your money mishap. Do you have anything else to share with the people this week?
What are you saying? I'm just terrible with money. I have a lot of confessions to share with the people. I actually do. I think I mentioned on a couple podcasts that I went to a sports conference and how I had this great time or whatever. And that I was then going to another conference in DC. And for that conference in DC, I actually made a huge mistake. So I don't know how I did this, but somehow I booked the hotel using a third party site, which I never do. I don't know what happened, but I guess I must have Googled the name of the hotel and just clicked on the first link and just not paid attention to the fact that it was a third party. So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two is that the hotel was booked for the wrong night. So Brittne, all right, I'm at a work retreat with my colleague who's also going to this conference with me, and he's leaving a night earlier than I am. And so we're trying to coordinate things because I know he's going to be there sooner. And he's like, "What hotel are you staying at?" And I'm telling him the name of the hotel. And he's like, "Oh, okay. Where is that at?" Because he's trying to figure out how close our hotels are from the conference site. And so I go, I'm not sure what the address is. And so I'm looking through my email trying to search for the hotel. And then I start freaking out because by the time I find the hotel, I realize it's booked for the wrong night. And now I'm freaking out because I have no hotel for the night that I'm actually going to be there. And so now I realize I need to call and like change the night. And I'm like, okay, how hard could this be? I'm sure I'm not the first who would book a hotel for the wrong night. I don't even know how this happened. This is normally not a mistake that I would make. So I don't, anyway, it's fine. So I'm trying to find the number and then I realize it's a third party site. And so that's when I'm like freaking out because you and I have talked before about the challenges of booking things through credit card portals or through third party sites is that whenever you need to make a change, it is like pulling teeth, right? The third party side is like, you got to talk to the hotel. The hotel is like, you got to talk to the third party. And it was just bad. We tried to contact the hotel, couldn't get the right number. Like, first they told me I couldn't get a refund. Then they told me they'd give me a voucher for part of the amount. And I had to like talk to somebody and somebody. I was on hold for an ungodly amount of time. Like, it was just a mess. And I was like, oh my gosh, cannot believe that I did this. So I finally like get that sorted out. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to book the hotel for the right night directly from the hotel. And then I realized that the price that I paid before was like twice the amount of the actual cost of the hotel. It was like a whole mess. And I was like, okay, this is something that I can learn from. This is a character building moment for me. This is an opportunity for me to practice patience as I'm on hold with these third party sites. This is a chance for me to work on my negotiation skills as they're telling me that I can't get a refund. So finally got it sorted out. But let's just say it took a lot more character building than I was expecting to build that day. But I did get it sorted out. But that is definitely a confession for me.
Oh my gosh, Lisha, that sounds like a huge headache. And I can say that I've been there with you. Not to say that I've like booked the wrong day for the hotel or unknowingly used a third party. However, I have used a third party before and had to change my reservation. And Lord Jesus, I don't know, countless hours, Lisha, like where you put them on hold and you've like, dang, I cleaned my dishes, I made my bed, vacuumed the floor, and this person still isn't here. So I'm sorry. And I'm so happy to hear, though, your reframe. I love the growth there, girl. So I'm glad that it didn't like steal your joy.
I've been working on myself. I don't know how effective it's been, but I'm like, okay, you catch more bees with honey. So let me be nice. Let me be positive. Let me try to do something else while they put me on hold. Let me try to count to 3. So yeah, but anyway, hopefully this ends up having like a good ending. They told me I was going to get a full refund, use my negotiation skills. Thank you, Jesus. But I've not yet gotten the refund. You know, it's one of those things where they say in certain amount of business days. I'm like, okay, then we're on
Mhm.
business day 5. So hopefully I get my money back. We'll see.
So I have a different money mishap but it has a similar process of me having to call someone, waiting on hold and negotiating and trying to figure things out. And okay, I'm being vulnerable here, people. So in 2020, we had a different tax accountant and he messed something up, or the IRS messed something up, and we actually were supposed to get a refund. So after, like, calling back and forth with the IRS for numerous occasions, I was able to figure it out, and then with our new accountant, Alexis from Cerebral, who we've had on past episode, she was able to mitigate this, and we were supposed to get a refund. So I was looking for that refund at some point in my life in 2020. The check didn't come, and mom brain kicked in, and I forgot. And so then we got a letter from the IRS this year saying, like, hey, this check expired. You didn't cash it. And what's the issue? Do you want us to reissue it? How should we negotiate this? So I received the form from the IRS. Typically, I'm the person who calls and does all that stuff. And I call the person and she's like, oh, I don't see it. So I'm literally on the phone for hours, like, hey, how can I help you? Like, what other information do you need? And she's like, oh, you have to submit this form. If you could have told me that like in the first 10 minutes of this conversation, then it would have saved you a lot of headache and me. But I think part of the problem is when you're reaching a person who's supposed to help you with a situation, it depends on their expertise. And so it was just that this IRS representative that I had didn't have the expertise to help me. And so she had to consult her supervisor. Nonetheless, I still haven't gotten my refund yet, but I'm looking for it this time. I'm looking for it. And this also just shows how comfortable we are. It wasn't a small, like it wasn't hundreds of dollars. It was a couple $1,000s. And it's like, how do you not get a couple $1,000s and not like call in 4 years, literally 4 years we've missed.
Well, we already talked about how you are money bag Brittany over there because I would notice a couple thousand, but You know what? I can sympathize with your story because as someone who unfortunately still has student loans and is in the public service loan forgiveness program, I had the same experience with where you talking about people of varying levels of expertise. That has rung true. Every single time I call these Mohila folks about my student loans, I'm like, are we working with a trainee today? Can you just
Mm.
pass me on to the supervisor? And of course, they ask you all these preliminary questions first. You got to listen to a 2 or 3 minute message that's not pertaining to you. They ask if your information is changed. You want to verify 20 different forms of identification. You're like, nothing's changed. Every time you get switched to somebody else, verify the same information. They're reading through notes. You trying to teach them the rules. I just, let me tell you, God is working on me. My patience, it's just, I'm like, man, I'm not my best self right now. And I'm realizing that and I need to take a breath.
I know. I'm like, I understand that you're just a messenger, but you have to that I've talked to 15 people before you, and so I'm a little frustrated. I always give that backstory. Like, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the situation, but you about to get it.
As you can see, our audience can see how Brittany and I deal with conflict. So we're still working on ourselves. That's our money confession jointly. Both of us have had the frustrating experience of being left on call and using travel portals and trying to change travel and dealing with that frustrating experience and being put on hold for lots of time and all that jazz. So we're working on ourselves. If you are listening to this and you've also had that experience, we can sympathize with you for sure. But we're going to move on from that and something a little bit more positive. As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
Lisha, do you remember that day when you paid the last penny on your credit card debt and car loan?
Yeah, it just felt so heavy and so constricting. And when I finally did pay it off, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders because I knew that next month I was going to have so much extra cash flow.
You know, that same narrative is something that is echoed by a lot of the clients I have helped to pay off their debt. And I recall receiving that letter in the mail from SoFi. It said, "Congratulations, your loan is paid in full."
If you can identify with our story, we've got a product or a solution for you.
We've created the Debt Payoff Bootcamp, which includes the joyfully free accelerator that helps you get control over that consumer debt, those car loans, without sacrificing joy. And it includes student loans made simple.
Yep, that's right. Student loans can be complicated, but don't worry, I've got you covered. In this Student Loans Made Simple series, we give you the high yield information that you need to create the plan that's right for you.
We have the tools, the strategies included in this debt payoff course that's going to get you to financial freedom.
Head over to wealthmindedmd.com and click the link to our Debt Payoff Bootcamp to start your transformation today. And so here is our financial focus for this week. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about something that has been really evident in my life. And I alluded to this when we first started this episode. And I was talking about how May is a particularly tough month for me financially because it's when I spend a lot of money. It's kind of like December when, I don't know about you, Brittany, when I'm buying a lot of gifts for my family and things like that. I always spend a lot more in the month of December because of Christmas. And in the month of May, I spend a lot because I mentioned I'm traveling and I'm always getting these invites. And I don't think that I'm the only one. I think that this time of the year for a lot of people is when they tend to have a lot of large expenses, whether it is them moving, because this is sort of the end of the academic year for a lot of people. And so maybe they've graduated and have moved on to a different training site or have moved to a different job, started a new job. Maybe that you're like me and you're listening to this and you've gotten a lot of wedding invitations because your friends have found love and you're happy for them and they've, invited you to share in that experience, which is awesome, but it's not cheap. Or maybe you're like me and your friends are having babies or your family is booking vacation. Or maybe you're like Brittany and you just got everyday large expenses because you have kids and you're paying for daycare and school tuition and that sort of thing, which sounds like a lot, by the way. I'm sorry, Brittany. But whichever camp you're in, if you're in the childless camp like me, where you're just dealing with wedding invites, baby showers, and family vacations, or if you are trying to balance motherhood or parenthood and all of the expenses that come with that, we thought it'd be really interesting to sort of talk about what we do whenever we have super large expenses.
Yeah. And for me, when I think about the largest expense that we have, is taxes. I think I've shared this before in prior episodes that although we have an accountant who helps us to conceptualize how much our tax burden will be, it's not always to the dollar, right? And one of the ways that I've tried to help to mitigate this is by saving in advance. You mentioned December, you mentioned May, and a lot of friends getting married. Some of those transitions we can kind of predict in advance. And so, Lisha, I would love to hear about how you start to conceptualize these big expenses. You know that you have two brothers and their birthdays are, a couple of days away from each other, and so how do you plan for that?
So I'm gonna be like my mom where she says, "Don't do as I do as I say." So that's sort of this thing where it's like I need to take my own advice. So this is how I should handle things. So just, moment of transparency. So one of the things that I've learned in dealing with a large expense, as I mentioned, whether it's a wedding invitation, baby shower invitation, a family vacation, daycare, whatever it is to try to estimate the cost and leave room for error. And it's that last part that I think is really key. Because as someone who's finance minded, of course, when someone invites me somewhere or I have an expense, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how much is this going to cost me? Right. And I think that that's most people's first thought. But I think what has really gotten me into trouble in the past is not leaving room for error. So, for example, I would know that I'm going on this trip and I would say, okay, how much is the flight? How much is the hotel? I would give, some estimate of, okay, how much do I think it's going to cost? Right. But I wouldn't leave room for error. And inevitably, there would be costs that would come up that I did not account for. And when those things would come up, then I would resort to, okay, I'm going to use credit cards, or okay, I'm just going to pay for it. And then I'm going to be living tightly for the next month until I get the next paycheck. And so I think for me, it's like, all right, I need to, one, have a good idea of how much it's going to be, and then leave room for error in case those expenses end up exceeding what I'd had in mind.
I like that you're planning ahead and estimating the cost. Whenever we're making estimations, I think we can look to online sources to get some idea of around what is the average cost for this. But oftentimes, I feel that that's not accurate enough. And I want to speak with friends, families about what the cost may be. I don't know how you feel about this, but sometimes like talking about money kind of have to cushion it a bit. So I wonder if you have an approach, like where do you go to estimate the cost of some of these things? Do you strictly use online sources? Do you talk to friends and colleagues where money might still be a little bit taboo, especially if they're not someone who you're very close with? And what type of words or language do you use?
So that is a lot. I will say that I'm not always super successful with this, but one of the things that I've tried to do, especially when it's like friends and family for one of those types of trips, so say it's like a family vacation or wedding invite, is I'll try to talk to the person who's planning it, right? Especially for like, this happens a lot with like bachelorette party invites where they're like, oh, Alicia, we want you to come because, I'm live for the party. And I'm like, yeah, okay. What's the budget? Like, what are we working with? Because one of the things that I don't like is when I say that I'm going to do something and then I'm penny pinching the entire time. What I like to do is just give me an idea. I tell whoever's planning, can you give me an estimate of how much you think this trip is going to cost? And sometimes maybe they haven't thought that far. Like they may know, oh, we want to go to Miami or we want to go to Vegas, right? And maybe they haven't. They're like, hey, we're going to stay here a few nights, whatever. And I'll usually say, all right, is there any way I'm not trying to add more to your plate, that you can maybe come up with an itinerary or something and just let me know an estimate of the cost, right? Because what I don't want to do is commit to something that I cannot fully carry out. And I know that the person planning doesn't like that either, right? Usually they're the one putting down deposits and wanting to make sure things add up. And no one likes to be stuck with excess costs or the full bill that people aren't paying for. So usually I will go to the person who's planning the trip and ask them for an estimate. And again, leave room for error. When it's family, I don't know, maybe my family is different, but we're so used to talking about money that whenever we're planning a family vacation, we'll talk to my dad. And if this is a trip that he is paying partially for as a part of our inheritance or whatever, then he'll be very clear. Like, you get this amount of money. If he's not paying for something, he's very, very clear. Like, hey, this is you. You're on your own. This is how much it's going to cost. So my family is pretty like by the book just because we have family members. Like I have a huge extended family and each one of them is at a different financial level. Like I have some family members who are very well off and I have other family members who are not as well off. Some family members who are retired and have lots of money in savings and other family members who are not in that same financial position. And so, in order to be fair across the board, my family has learned over time, all right, we need to let everybody know how much this dinner costs or how much this thing costs. So, for example, my little cousins are graduating from high school and
Aw.
I know it's so cute. We are like planning a bunch of stuff for them. And one of the things is like a dinner. We always do like a dinner at a fancy restaurant. My aunt who's planning this is like, okay, we're going to have a set menu. It's going to cost $100 per person. Everybody knew that a month in advance. And so what's like, okay, we all know how much this dinner is going to cost. We know that the waitress is not going to split up the check 50 ways because our family's humongo. So one person's going to pay, everybody pay the one person who's paying $100. So we are like very sort of by the book. And so that's how we've navigated things, or at least I've navigated things with my family and my friends. Is that similar to how you've done things too, Brittany?
Yeah. So in the past, when we go to Michigan, we also have a big family. We really like to give an experience. Y'all know that I'm not the best gift giver. So typically, I don't buy every single person a gift, especially if they're an adult. It's really hard to think about what do I give an adult, at least for me, because it's like if you want it, you probably can already go out and buy it. Unless, it's someone who cannot buy it, then I might just give them cash and so they can buy their own thing. But one of the things my husband and I have done is to just take everyone for an experience. And so whenever there's like a large expense, we try to take ownership over that so that we can plan around it and say, okay, this is how much we can budget for. What can we provide to the family and give them some type of meaningful experience that's within our control? Where it becomes a little bit of like uneasy is when you're out to dinner with everybody. It's like, oh, we don't want the person to split up 50 checks. We haven't had a discussion because these are my colleagues, or this is just like a spur of the moment. Hey, do you want to go out to dinner? And they're like, oh, we'll split the check, 5 ways. And such has gotten, three cognacs and there's a Long Island and we have like 50 appetizers on the table. And you're thinking, how much is this going to be? Actually, it just came for my one chicken tender meal and I ordered from the kids menu, which is something that I would do. Right now, I don't want to be the person that says, oh, actually, I'll just take mine separate. I have said that before. Well, I'll just take my meal separately. And maybe it's an uncomfortable moment for me, but I'm not getting into a position in which I can't afford whatever the expense will be on the end of that. Or I've said, okay, I see what's on the table. I can afford it. And I'm just going to have to sacrifice in the future for, something else that I've wanted to plan.
I'm glad that you brought this up. I'm curious to get your take on this. Are you in the camp of like split checks evenly or in the camp of I'm going to pay for my own meal? It seems like you're in the I'm going to pay for my own meal, but you know what? I've talked about this with some of my other physician colleagues, and there's always mixed opinions on this, right? People are like, no one wants to be the one splitting up the check, counting down to the last penny, writing on the receipt, the last four digits of each person's card. Like, come on, y'all. We are no longer in school. Like, why are we doing this? But at the same time, I hear what you're saying is that sometimes when you split the check evenly, everybody didn't order evenly. And so you end up subsidizing somebody else's meal. This usually comes into play whenever I'm out with friends who do not drink, either because they're
Mhm.
pregnant or for religious reasons, or maybe they're just choosing not to drink at that time. And then other people who are drinking, usually that's one of the bigger parts of the bill, are ordering multiple
Yeah.
drinks. And it's like, okay, how do we navigate this in a way that doesn't make us all look cheap, that doesn't make us all want to pull our hair out, but that is also fair?
Mhm.
And so maybe not with larger groups, but like if you're out with some girlfriends and it's like two or three of you all, do you all each take turns just paying for the check? Do you guys split it evenly? You pay for your own meals? How do you all sort of navigate this?
Yeah. So for me, I think it's happened in a couple of ways, but usually if it's just me and a couple of girlfriends, then one person takes the check. My girlfriends were in from Michigan and Brooke had a dance recital. Kevin Jr., KJ had his birthday party. We went out to dinner. My husband and I, we just covered the thing. We're happy that you're here. This is our treat to you. And we just cover it. And my friends and I, we thankfully are not in a position where we're counting every single penny. And we've been friends for such a long time. So it's just like, girl, I got you. And I've even done that with other coworkers as well. Like, I got you. Now, if there are 8 people, I don't got 8 people. And in that case, you might say, okay, I will pay the bill. How about you all just take a look over what you've ordered and Venmo me? And some people are going to give me more than expected. Some people are going to give me less than expected, but I know that everybody's going to give me something to offset the cost. And so if it's a difference of just maybe $40 additional that I have to pay, that's not a huge burden to me versus, hundreds of dollars. So that's one way so that you don't have to like write down and kind of let everybody be responsible for figuring out how much they want to give and allow them to Venmo you that way. That's one of the ways that I've taken control over it. But again, I'm not monitoring every single dollar. And it's just what is within reason that I know that I can afford to pay.
No, that's good. That's good. I will say, you know what? I used to love the Venmo thing, like when someone would cover the check or whatever, and I would just Venmo them. But now, since I'm into credit card points, it always leaves like bitter taste. So I'm like, ugh, I know somebody else already offered to pay for the check, and now I gotta send cash that I get 0 points for when I could have paid with my own credit card and got like 5 times the points. This has happened so many times to me, and I'm like, oh, let me all right, Lisha, see the forest through the trees. It's like a double-edged sword. I mean, the person who pays with the card, right? They get the points, right? It says a perk. But then usually they're not always Venmo the proper amount. So you end up taking some on the chin. So it's like a catch 22. I have to remind myself of that whenever I'm sending Venmo nowadays. But
So funny. All right. So we've talked about estimating costs and leaving room for error. What would you say is the next step? Like after we've done our due diligence, what else can we do to manage this unexpected large expense?
yeah, I think we do what you have been telling me to do for a long time, which is save in advance. And one of the things that I've learned, even as I've become an attending and my income has increased, is that sometimes it's still difficult to cash flow. I can cash flow a lot more expenses now just because I make more money now, but it's still better for me and my own budgeting and planning if I was able to save for that ahead of time. And for me, I think we talked about before how I've started a travel fund where I'll put money, each month into the travel fund. Some months it's being spent faster than it's being accumulated, but the thought is still there. And, you and I talked about how maybe I need to add another fund for like wedding invites and things like that. One of the things I've really tried to do is use compound interest to my advantage. And that just basically means keeping the money in a high yield savings account or in a money market fund that's going to earn me interest. Right. Oftentimes, the savings account that is affiliated with your checking account at your main bank may not be earning you any interest. You're saving money, you're putting it in that account. The problem is that you're just not earning any interest, or you're not earning any extra free money. And oftentimes, if you put that money into a different kind of savings account, like a high yield savings account or a money market fund or whatever, you can oftentimes earn a lot more interest on your money, especially around this time of the year that we're recording when the interest rates are really high. Most high yield savings account are giving you 5% on your money, right? And so if you had saved, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever, they would give you an extra $500 by the end of the year. Usually it's given out each month in interest. That's $500 you wouldn't have had otherwise. And so for me, there's like just so many perks to keeping money in a high yield savings account or a money market fund. And it allows me to get even more money that I can use for travel. And so I would say my second tip is to save ahead and properly in one of these accounts that's going to help you earn interest on the money.
All right, so I want to take a step back. Lisha, you mentioned two accounts, the high yield savings account or a money market fund. Can you tell people what each of these accounts are and what are some of the benefits of doing that besides earning more interest than what a brick and mortar bank would provide?
Yeah. So high yield savings account is just a savings account that gives you a higher yield. So it's going to pay you more to keep your money in that account. And that's what I mean by it gives you the opportunity to earn compound interest. Usually, a lot of these high yield savings accounts are done at online banks. And so, because they are not a brick and mortar bank that you are walking into a building, they have fewer costs. And because they have fewer costs and less overhead, they can give you, as the customer, more perks. And usually, those perks are in the form of higher interest on your money. And so usually I explain this is you can either earn interest or you can pay interest, right? So if you have credit card that you haven't paid off at the end of the month, you're usually paying interest. If you have money that you saved in a high yield savings account, you are earning interest. Obviously, it's better to earn interest than pay interest. And putting money in these high yield savings accounts gives you the ability to earn interest on your money. So getting extra free money by virtue of just having the money in the account. A money market fund is very similar. So think of a money market fund as a high yield savings account that's at a brokerage firm. So brokerage firms are places like Fidelity, Vanguard, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab. These are places that allow you to invest money, but they also have usually at each one a type of holding account where it's kind of like a savings account. And they, technically speaking, invest that money in very safe investments like bonds and things like that. So your money is virtually guaranteed and super safe there. But the perk of doing it is that it also gives you the ability to earn interest on your money. And so think about a high yield savings account as a savings account at an online bank that allows you to earn interest. And think of a money market fund as a savings account at a brokerage firm that allows you to earn interest. Sometimes people will ask me if one is better than the other. I think they're both great. And so I use both. I keep my emergency fund in a high yield savings account. I keep money that I'm planning to invest for the future in a money market fund. Like if I haven't invested it yet, I'll keep my travel fund in a money market fund. So just I use them very similarly. I don't think there's a huge difference among them, but it's just these are two different accounts that you can use to save money and earn interest at the same time.
Love that. And Lisha, sorry, I'm jumping into the weeds a little bit, but FDIC insurance for money market fund, is that insured in the same way as it is for a high yield savings account or no?
So, short answer, yes. Technically speaking, no. So, let me explain this. So, FDIC is insurance on your money whenever it is in a bank. And so that is basically the government saying, hey, if the bank goes bankrupt, we will guarantee your money up to a certain amount. And so I think the amount is like $250,000 in cash per account, right? So if you have more than $250,000 in cash, congratulations. But also, you should think about putting that money into another kind of bank. So your money is insured up to $250,000 when it's in a bank. FDIC applies to banks. And so, technically speaking, if your money's in a money market fund, it's not FDIC insured because it's not in a bank. However, there's something called SIPC insurance. It's the same thing, but for brokerage funds. So, long story short, not to get into the weeds, your money is insured at both places, just using a different type of insurance, if you will. Hopefully that's clear.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. That was a little added piece that was unscripted here, but I think it really helps us to understand where we can put our money. And I do the same thing. I try to keep as little cash in brick and mortar banks as possible, which is like irks my husband a little bit because he doesn't look at our high yield savings account or the money market fund. But I'm like, listen, I want to earn some interest, even if it's just for 6 months. Like, let's move this large chunk of money. There's no reason why we're keeping it there. But the banks are very strategic and they require that you have a minimum balance in some accounts or have, all of these different money coming in as far as direct deposits and things of that nature in order to avoid that fee. So you just want to keep the minimum amount there that allows you to be liquid enough, that allows you to not overdraw your account and meets those requirements, and try to move those additional savings for a specific purpose in the high yield savings account or in the money market fund so that you can earn a little interest. And that will allow for a little room for error, as you mentioned in the first point.
Yeah, I do want to correct myself here. Most banks, the amount that is insured is up to $250,000. However, there is one bank where they insure a lot more. I want to say it's like 5 million or something, and that is Wealthfront. And it's not that Wealthfront is just way better than everybody else. I mean, maybe that's subjective. But the reason why Wealthfront can insure a lot more money is because they actually are an online bank that disperses your money among other smaller banks. And so because of that, they can insure a large amount of money. Let me explain this. So if you have like $1 million, let's say you just sold your home and you haven't bought a new home yet, one of the things that you could do is put your $1 million in one commercial bank or one regular bank. The problem with that is that only up to 250,000 of that is insured. So if the bank went bankrupt, the government could only technically guarantee you $250,000. Now, when banks in the past, like last year, have gone bankrupt, the government has actually given people all of their money back. But just technically speaking, FDIC insurance applies to the first 250,000. So if you have a million and you put that whole million into one bank, the whole million may not be insured. Option number two is to put 250,000 in four different banks, right? That way each $250,000 is insured. Option number three is to put the full million into a Wealthfront account, and Wealthfront will distribute your money among the banks. When you log into Wealthfront, you won't see that it's distributed among the banks. You'll see the money in a singular account, but just know that all of it is insured. So hopefully they didn't get too into the weeds, but I did want to make this exception because I think that that's the reason why some people will use Wealthfront as sort of their bank of choice whenever they have large amounts of cash. And we know that Brittne is money bags Brittne over here, and so she may have large amounts of cash. I want to make this very clear for her and for the audience.
Yeah, I think there are a few more caveats, but we're not going to talk about those and go into the weeds too much on this.
Okay, yeah. And so another thing that I do to sort of better manage some of these large expenses is to see if there's a way I can decrease costs. And I know that sounds like pretty self explanatory and like, duh. But for me, this is really evident when I'm traveling because, as you all know, and the audience knows, I love to travel. And I've learned, like a lot of people have learned, that whenever I am traveling alone, it just costs more. And whenever I can travel with someone, I can usually split costs. And so it tends to be a little bit more affordable. And I think what I've done is take that a step further. I mentioned that I was going on all of these conferences and how the conferences give me an opportunity to not only learn something new, but also to meet up with friends that I may have in that area. One of the perks of medical training is that you tend to move a lot, or at least when you're training around people, they tend to move a lot. And so by default, just by, being in this profession for as long, I have friends in most big cities. Like I tend to know at least somebody. Some people I know better than others, but usually when I'm traveling somewhere, I will think to myself, okay, who do I know from training that I'm like pretty cool friends with that lives in this area? Because maybe I can hang out with them. Maybe I can stay with them. And it's not a matter of just like inconveniencing them. Like, obviously, they have a young family, they have a young child. I try to be mindful of that. But if it's somebody that I'm really close to or that I know really well, usually I'll let them know in advance that I'm coming and I'll be like, hey, you want to hang out? Can I hang out with you? Can I stay with you for a night? And just it allows me to not only catch up with them, but also can save costs. And so I think for me, whenever I have these large expenses, I'm thinking about, are there different ways that I can maybe reduce costs in traveling with someone, staying with one of my friends instead of staying in a hotel? Those are some of the things that I think of.
I've also done that for travel. Sometimes when I travel, because I'm a mom of 2 children and Kevin also sleeps in the bed with me, I don't wanna sleep with anybody else. I don't wanna be in anybody's house. I wanna be by myself because this is one of the only times in which I can, like, have my me time. So I definitely hear you. It is a way to save costs, and I've done that with friends, but typically I choose friends who don't also have children. And I think that works. And when you're thinking about other large expenses, for example, our taxes, I used to think that there are no ways that I could lower my tax expense, but there are actually many ways in which you can strategize to decrease your taxes. So if you haven't listened, you definitely want to go and listen to that episode about our taxes, how we reduce our taxes and why your tax bill is so high, and also the secrets from a tax accountant, because that's one of the largest expense, right? So what Lisha's saying, reducing your expenses or reducing the cost not only applies to travel costs, it applies to other costs that you might think of. Maybe this is a little bit of an inversion on reducing the cost, but maximizing the value. So, one of the ways that I can do that if I'm purchasing a gift is I use, and I'm going to pronounce this so wrong, but the Rakuten or
Yeah, Rakuten. I didn't even know you knew about Rakuten. So my face here for the people who can't see, which is like everybody because it's an audio podcast, I'm shocked because Rakuten is usually a point that I will bring up when I'm talking to people about credit card points and ways to optimize them.
mm,
So I'm pleasantly surprised that you know about Rakuten. And for people who do not know about Rakuten, you want to tell people what Rakuten is?
so essentially, it's a company in which they give you cash back, or Alicia's talking about credit card points. You can get Amex credit for some of your expenses. So for me, I purchase a lot of things online and I have a browser extension for Rakuten. So anytime I go to any website to purchase anything online, it will pop up to say, okay, this is offering 10% cash back or this is offering 1% cash back. And that way I can just increase the value of my purchase by not only purchasing a gift for someone, and of course they're loving it because I got some tips from Leisha and I didn't do it on my own, right? Or that I'm traveling to spend or purchasing something that we need, but I'm also getting a little bit of cash back on that. And so it helps to reduce the cost and increase the value of that purchase. What Leisha's talking about is that it has a partner with Amex. And so instead of using that cash back for just cash, in which they mail you like this big check, they send the emails, here's your big fat check. And sometimes that check is only $5. But you know what? When it comes in the mail, I'm excited. But now I've switched it to Amex points. And so we'll get the Amex points for those purchases. And when I'm purchasing someone a gift, now what I'll do is I'll go to Rakuten and see where they're offering the largest bonus of cash back and go to that site. So recently, my kids are always growing and my kids are very slim like I am, but they're tall. And so they grow out of clothes very quickly. So I've been purchasing new clothes for Brooke and KJ. And I'm like, let me look on Rakuten to see who's given the biggest cash back because it's an unexpected expense for me. Usually my kids' clothes are hand me down. So anytime I have to go into my wallet and purchase their clothes, it feels like a blow to the chest because I know they're only going to be in it for like 6 months at most. And recently I've had to spend a couple $100s on purchasing my kids new clothes because they've grown out of everything and I couldn't find anybody to donate clothes. And how I did that is I just went on Rakuten. I found when Carter's was giving 10% cash back, or I referred my husband right and now. So he gets 10% on as an additional bonus on whatever the offering is. And that way I get some money back, reducing the cost or increasing the value of that purchase, even though it was an unexpected expense.
Brittany, I'm so proud of you. I feel like a proud mama right now. And just like Brittany said, Rakuten is a shopping portal. So this is like an easy way, in my view, and I think you view it the same way, Brittany, to get cash back, or I like to get points because I can maximize the point value. I can get so much more value out of points. I want to explain this really quickly because I didn't know what Rakuten was before like a few months ago. This was not something that anyone had ever talked to me about. And I don't think is very well known in a lot of the personal finance space. A lot of the personal finance space is spent on, saving money, investing money, getting out of debt. But very rarely do they show you ways to optimize your expenses or to get cash back whenever you buy things. Like this isn't really common knowledge, or at least it wasn't in the circles that I was in. So I didn't know what it was. And so if you were like me, Rakuten is a shopping portal. So for a lot of people, Brittany included, she says she buys a lot of things online, like a lot of us do. Or maybe you're someone who goes to a physical mall because you want to try things on. You have different ways that you can purchase that item. So if you want to buy a pair of shoes, for example, and you want to buy them from Macy's, let's say, one option that you have is you can walk into the Macy's store and you can purchase the shoes and you walk out of the store with the shoes, right? Another option you have is you can go to Macy's and you can purchase the shoes and they can mail the shoes to your house, like if they don't have your size in the store, right? Another option that you have is you can go online to Macy's.com and buy and order those shoes to be delivered to your house. But another option that you have, which can net you more cash back or more credit card points if that's what you desire, is to use a shopping portal called Rakuten. Rakuten is a shopping portal, and I think Rakuten makes money from these different stores. But how you use it as a consumer is you go to Rakuten.com and you can look up, I think, the store that you're trying to purchase things from or the particular item that you want. And instead of going to Macy's.com, you go to Rakuten first and then you click Macy's.com, or you can download an extension on your browser, which is what Brittany does. But you just take that extra step. So for me, I don't have the extension on my computer. So I go to Rakuten.com and then I click Macy's. And then it takes me to the Macy's site and I can still buy that pair of shoes. Because I took that extra step of clicking on Rakuten first, I might get cash back. So Rakuten, the cash back for each store changes daily, but it might be like, okay, you get 2% cash back, you get 10% cash back. Around Black Friday, they have their biggest sales and they'll be like, it's 20% cash back, right? So if you're purchasing a pair of shoes for $100, if you went directly to Macy's.com, you would pay $100 for that pair of shoes. But if you went to Rakuten first and it was offering 20% cash back, not only could you get that same shoes for $100, but Rakuten will then give you, in this case, $20 cash back or $20 worth of American Express credit card points, which the equivalent of $20 is, I think, 2,000 American Express points. And so through Rakuten, you have the option of getting cash back and they mail you a check each quarter or American Express credit card points. But this is something that, again, I don't think a lot of people know about. I certainly didn't. But what you're saying is, hey, if you're going to spend the money anyway, whether it's booking a hotel or buying a gift for somebody, maybe there's a way you can get cash back from doing so that it actually doesn't cost you that much. Or maybe there's a way to get credit card points back from that purchase so that you can then say, okay, I had to spend this money, but now I have credit card points that I can then utilize for travel and I can use this for a future flight or whatever. And so I really like your strategy of using shopping portals. Mine was very similar in that I try to book on credit card points. If I am traveling for leisure, so not for work, if I'm traveling for leisure, I will oftentimes see if there's a way that I can book it cheaper on credit card points. So if I'm booking far enough in advance, usually I can find a great deal. If it's just a domestic flight, so I live in Atlanta, if I'm flying to New York or LA or something like that, sometimes I'll just book it on credit card points directly or on Delta miles. I have a lot of Delta Sky miles, and so I'll sometimes use those miles for that trip. But that's a way to decrease costs is to say, okay, one option is to pay cash using a shopping portal like Rakuten and getting more cash back. Another option is saving my cash and just using credit card points or just using airline miles for the flight. I like these tips of searching for ways that we can potentially cut costs whenever there is a large expense.
And I want to clarify that you can also use Rakuten in store. Like they have an app, you can pull up the QR code or whatever and like link the offer. And so there's ways that you can use it for in-store shopping. I know not everybody likes to shop online. Like my mother does not like to shop online. But what she'll do is she will sometimes also use other apps which will give cash back if you scan your receipts and different things like that. It all depends on you and how much you want to do with this in order to save some money on some of these large expenses. But you want to leverage the expense. That's basically what we're saying is like, leverage the expense in the best way possible. It's not rocket science, right? It doesn't take a lot of mental energy in order to do this. For me, it's literally just a click of the button. I click the button and I go shopping. So for my grocery shopping, something that I do often, Instacart, and I get 1% cash back. Usually this time I got 11% cash back or 11% in the value of American Express points. So definitely want to leverage these expenses as best as you can to maximize the value of them. All right, Lisha, what is the last point? What is the last tip that you have for the people today?
So, one of the things that I've had to do, less so now that I make a little bit more money, but definitely when I was in training and I was making around 60, 70, $80,000 a year, is be realistic about what I could afford.
Mm,
And sometimes that meant making the hard decision of declining some invites and
yeah.
sending a gift instead. I use this example all the time about wedding invites because I love to see my friends get married. I don't know what it is. I love a good wedding. Like, it's just, I get to see my friend. They look beautiful, see them walk down the aisle. I get to eat good food. We get to have a dance party. It's like usually if it's one of my friends, there's other friends there too. So I get to see people I don't normally see. It's a good time. I love a good wedding. And you're laughing. I just love it. Anyway, love going to weddings, but they're can be expensive. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because like now that I'm an attending, I make more money. A lot of my friends are in the same financial position as well, which means like when I was in training, maybe the weddings will be a little bit more economical, but now they're like super swanky in fancy places. I talked about how by the time this episode drops, I will have come back from France because one of my friends getting married literally in the south of France. Like these are the kind of things that happen in my friend group, and it can be expensive. Like, by the time you book a flight, in my case, an international flight, book a hotel for several nights, pay for your own food, pay for travel, entertainment during that weekend, buy a wedding gift, like, it can cost a lot of money. And when I was in training, I wasn't in a financial position where I could spend $3,000 on my friend's destination wedding. Now I'm in the position where I can plan in advance for that and I'm better able to do those things. But before I couldn't. And there were some wedding invitations, baby shower invitations, party invitations for whatever reason, or, my friends would go on vacation and invite me or whatever that I would have to decline. And I would say, you know what, I can't make it this time. Please keep me in mind for the next time. If it was a wedding, I would decline the invitation and then offer to take the couple out for dinner at a different time, or I would send a gift instead. I love sending bottles of wine because I'm a wine person. And so I would send them like this really fancy, swanky bottle of wine with custom champagne glasses. Like I would do things to let them know, hey, you matter to me. Seeing you happy matters to me and is something that I value and want to celebrate you and give you a gift or take you out. But I'm just not in the financial position to be able to make it to your wedding, but just want to show you that I still care about you. And I think at least my friends in the past have really appreciated that. And that unfortunately is something I've had to do where I've had to decline the invitation and give a gift instead.
Yeah. I think it's very hard sometimes because you consider all the things that you're missing out on, especially I have to save this for later. All right, I'm going to tell the people now.
Give us a tea. Now you like warmed us up.
So, the circumstances in which we missed this wedding were not due to costs. Like, it wasn't cost prohibitive. It was because of other issues, but we missed a wedding and Beyonce and Jay-Z were at that wedding.
Okay, we have different friends. Like the kind of friends, I mean, my friends are pretty awesome, right? They're getting married and tell the friends, but clearly there's a level up, right? You remember we talked about your friends were like giving away cars and like donating beds, and apparently now get married and invite Jay-Z and Beyonce to the wedding. Like, what is happening here? I knew that you were well off, Brittany. I didn't know it was this level. And this is a little bit of jealousy, but also me saying, if you get wedding invites like this, please invite me. Ask if you can get another plus one.
So we missed the wedding. So I didn't actually see Beyonce and Jay-Z at the wedding. And it still hurts me to this day. And if my husband listens to this episode, I know he's going to be upset. Nonetheless, not all of our friends know Jay-Z and Beyonce, but we do, we frequent some settings in which there are pretty high profile people. Honestly, for me, I've never been a person who values status so much, So nonetheless, I say all of that to say that I get the FOMO. I get that you're concerned about, hey, if I don't go to this event, then what am I going to miss out on? And that is really, really hard. And I would just also think about reframing that to say, okay, what am I gaining from saying no? Because sometimes when we say yes, when we really should be saying no, on the back end of that is a lot of mental burden. And I've had that cognitive load that I've had to like remedy and rectify for me personally because I knew I should have said no. Instead, I've said yes for all these other reasons. And I just really didn't acknowledge the long term impact of that decision. So I just wanted to put that out there that sometimes when you say no to your friends or to an event or invite, you're actually saying yes to something else, and that something else can be greater on the back end.
That's a really good like mini therapy session for all of us because I think this is something that I've struggled with is like, I care so much about my friends and my family that I'm willing to sacrifice for them. And I think that I need to put boundaries in place to say, okay, I cannot prioritize your own happiness above my own.
Mm,
And I can see how that sounds selfish, but I can also see how during the times where I have prioritized somebody else's needs or somebody else's happiness above my own, I've been the one that suffered. And that can
mhm.
happen in a lot of instances. Sometimes I overextend myself and I say yes to a lot of invitations. And then the day comes and I'm completely exhausted. I didn't leave room for me to get rest. This happens to all of us as we hit our 30s. We're like, I hope she cancels on me. But anyway, it's like, we've overextended ourselves. And then we have to end up canceling at the last minute, which makes things worse or going through with that commitment and like it not being good for us on the back end. And so I totally get what you're saying. I'm trying to be better at that this year. Sometimes I think it's that fear of like not wanting to disappoint people that you care about. But I've really noticed over the years and as we've all matured is like, all right, most of my friends nowadays can understand. Like they might be disappointed in the beginning when they first hear about it, but usually they understand and just sort of trusting that they will understand and trying to make up for it on the back end. Like I said, maybe you send a gift instead, maybe you take them out to dinner instead. But I think these are all really good tips. And so if you're like me, and you're getting invited to weddings, baby showers, or you like Brittany, you got super high tax bills, or maybe you're like her and you got a refund that you forgot about for 5 years, or you're getting invited to events with Jay-Z and Beyonce or whatever. These are some tips that you can use, which is, estimating the cost ahead of time and making sure that you're leaving room for error in case there are things that you didn't anticipate. Trying as best as you can to plan and save ahead and trying to save money in a high yield savings account or a money market fund if you can to sort of earn extra interest. See if you can find ways to cut costs, whether that's staying with friends instead of booking hotels, traveling with somebody, using shopping portals like Rakuten, or trying to book trips on credit card points. And then lastly, being realistic about what you can afford and not being afraid to decline some invitations if they don't fit in with your budget and spending plan for that month. So I think these are all really, really helpful tips.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm going to take us back just 1 minute. Lisha, what you said about setting up boundaries with family really resonated with me. I hear a lot of women say that. And I think that this burden is somewhat greater for minority families and immigrant families. And when that comes up, sometimes it doesn't have to be a no, it can be an instead. So, to that point of what you can afford, if your family is asking for $1,000 and you can't afford to give them $1,000, but you can afford to give them $250 or $500, then you can say, like, hey, I can't extend myself because this is going to put me in a difficult place. However, this is what I can offset for you, and this is what I can help you with. And I'm happy to brainstorm with you on how we might be able to make up the difference. So I just wanted to put that there because that also has felt very, very bad to me to say no to family, especially those who I want to help and they see that I'm in a better position than they are, in which oftentimes I am, but I just can't continue to give in that way. And so it's like, what can you give that can help them along their journey? All right. Sorry to take us back.
No worries. Now for our Wealthy Wonders segment, I have a question for you, Brittany. As we were talking about weddings and things like that, I have a question because this comes up quite a bit in the circles that I'm in. Is what is the standard wedding gift amount? So if you were invited to a
Mm.
wedding, what is considered, I don't even know if there is a certain consideration, like a good wedding gift? Like how much money do you spend on a wedding gift? Is it $50? Is it $100? Has it increased since you've gotten into a better financial position? Does it depend on whether you're going with your husband or going by yourself? Do you try to estimate how much the wedding couple spent on the meal and give that much? Like, what do you do for like standard wedding gift amounts?
So I want to tell you all that I am very frugal. So usually I think about, how much they actually need. So to say I have trouble giving adults gifts. And if it's like newlyweds, for example, and they haven't established themselves together, then I might buy them a nice gift where it's some nice china or something that I found very helpful, like an Instant Pot or an air fryer or a gift card to Macy's or something like that. If it's a couple who've been established for some time, so for example, my best friend, her parents are renewing their vows after 50 years. and they invited us to the wedding. We're not going to be able to attend, but I just messaged her mom. I was like, I know you all don't need anything. She's like, no, we don't, send some pictures of the kids or send a monetary gift. So for many people, I give them monetary gifts. And honestly, when we were married, I appreciated that a lot more because people have varying tastes and varying needs. Maybe I'm sending an Instant Pot in an air fryer and this person just eats out every night. And so they're not going to actually use that gift. Typically, when I think about the range of prices, I don't go above $100 unless it's a really, really good friend. Then I might go a little bit above that. Another idea is sometimes my best friends and we've gone in and done a group gift. And it's usually when it's a very expensive gift, then we'll split the cost that way. But typically, the limit is about $150, and that's for, like, a really good friend. So, sorry, I don't have any, like, strict guidelines or best practices. I think it kind of depends on where you are and who it's for, but that's how I navigate that.
Do you give more if you're going with Kevin versus if you're going by yourself?
No, because it's the same pot, and usually when someone invites me, they invite him or, because we're married, but I typically give about the same.
This has brought in more questions for me. This has nothing to do with our podcast. This is me being nosy. Do you get offended if someone doesn't invite your husband, only invites you? Because I've just heard of this story of like my friends, as a lot of them are getting married, they're like, hey, we got to cut down the guest list and everybody can't get a plus one. Is that something that bothers you? Because I'm not married, so I'm just very curious. Like, does that something that bothers you? Like, will you decline a wedding invitation if your husband isn't also invited? Or for a lot of people with young kids, they're like, oh, I can't go because my kids aren't invited. And so I just wonder how you, as somebody who's married with children, how you navigate wedding invites if the whole family isn't invited.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, I don't feel offended if my kids are not invited because I know some people don't want children at their wedding. It changes the vibe. We didn't want children at our wedding. There were children because I have nieces and nephews, but I wanted children that I knew that I could control. And to be honest, the plates are expensive, right? And if I have a child sitting on an adult plate, honestly, I could have given that child like some chicken fingers and fries and it would have been less for us. I have to acknowledge the cost that the bride and groom are spending in planning the wedding. I don't know if I would feel offended if they didn't invite my husband, but because we've been married for almost a decade, if they did not invite my husband, I would not go to the wedding and I would just send a gift instead because I'm not going to anybody's wedding without my husband unless there's a conflict in which our schedules don't align and he has to present at a conference or something like that or be somewhere else. And this is like a family member that I really want to be present for their wedding and a commitment that he really has to honor, then I would show up for myself. But if they don't invite the both of us, then I'm not going.
Is that because I'm just curious, because I think that's a perfectly valid answer, by the way. Not that you needed my approval, just saying. Is it because you don't want to be without him at the wedding or because you are offended that they didn't want him there? Like, I'm just curious. Let me give you some context. The reason why I'm asking is because as someone who's not married, most of the time when I'm getting a lot of wedding invites, it's rare to get a plus one, unless it's like my best friend or something. People just assume only married people get plus ones and single people don't. But as somebody who is not married, sometimes it's a little awkward to be invited to a wedding and have to go to that wedding alone, especially these destination weddings. It's like, okay, I'm spending thousands of dollars and now I'm going to be around people that I don't know. I got to be by myself. Like, I would like to be able to bring someone with me or have a companion. And I find that for a lot of people, they only consider that for married people. They do not consider that for unmarried people. And I personally feel some way about it, but I also understand, like, obviously weddings are expensive and they need a way to curb costs. I'm just trying to figure out, like, from your perspective as someone who is married, like, how you feel about all of that.
Yeah, for me, I could just tell you the frame of mind that I was in when I put together our guest list. If it was an established relationship, so somebody that I knew that they have been dating this guy for a while or dating this girl for a while, then I would give them a plus one. And I would often put on the invitation for Dr. Such and Dr. Such and just have their names listed there because I knew that, I mean, this person is likely coming with this person because they've been together for years, even though if they're not married. I also was thoughtful about the guest list. So, say, for example, I do have a friend who's not married. And when I invited her, I made sure that I invited somebody else that she knew and I sat them together. So that was one of the ways that I mitigated not giving plus ones to certain individuals. Then I might just send them a quick text message like, hey, I can give you a plus one, but this person is coming and y'all gonna sit together. So that way they didn't feel isolated and they knew that there was gonna be someone that they knew. So I was really, really thoughtful about our guest list and who we gave plus ones and our seating. If we couldn't, give a plus one, then we set older people together or younger people together just so that there would be ease of conversation. I understand when people cannot give plus ones to people who are just dating, especially if they haven't been dating very long, because it is quite expensive for our wedding. In transparency, we spent about 35 grand on our wedding. And your biggest expense, unless things have changed in the past 10 years, is the reception and is food and drinks. And you really have to think about who you want there and, just to be very thoughtful about that guest list.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I'm obviously not married, but both my brothers recently got married within the last couple of years. And so this has created a lot of family interesting conversations, shall we say, because they were feeling the crunch exactly what you said. Like, hey, the expensive part of the wedding is the reception. Everybody just cannot go. We need to cut down the guest list. Even like the room where we're having the reception has, a limitation on how many people can be here. So we just, unfortunately, we can't invite everybody, right? But the problem is that my family's huge. So just for the audience, my dad has 8 siblings, my mom has 13.
Wow.
Yeah, and so each of those siblings have kids, and each of those people have kids. So my family alone could fill a, like, 100 seat. And so my brothers, when they got married, there was, like, a lot of, "What? You didn't give auntie so and so and so and so?"
Hmm.
And they're like, "Well, look, I don't even talk to auntie so and so and so and so, and I don't even know how we're related," you know? So it
Yeah.
was there's a lot of back and forth, do we let the little cousins go? Of course, we've got 1,000 little cousins. Do we let babies come? Nobody wants baby crying during the vows, like, what's happening? But they're family. Weddings bring out a lot of interesting character in my family. But I hear what you're saying. The way some of my friends have mitigated this is that if it's a destination wedding, usually they give as best they can to try to give people plus one because I understand it's unreasonable to ask someone to pay thousands of dollars and
Mm.
spend an entire week or 4 straight days by themselves or to room and share a hotel room with somebody that they don't know. Most of my friends have been understanding in that regard. But when it is not a destination wedding, when it is like a domestic wedding, shall we say, usually they do what you do, where they sit people who don't have plus ones with other people that they know so that it's a little bit more enjoyable for them. Sorry about that segue. Okay. We have another segment for you, and that is a little healthcare hustle tip. This is a little bit different than what we were previously talking about, but I think it's really important to insert here. And that is for a lot of us who are physicians and work for academic institutions, the end of the academic calendar year is quickly approaching. For most of us, that is June 30th. And the reason why we are bringing this up as a healthcare hustle tip is because it is really, really imperative if you have not done so already and you work for an academic institution or whatever, or you're in training at an academic institution, is that you check your benefits. Because unlike people who are not physicians or who do not work in academic institutions, their fiscal year for their jobs usually ends in December or it has a different ending date. But for a lot of physicians who work for academic institutions, the end of the fiscal calendar year is June 30th. And that matters because you need to make sure you utilize all of your benefits. I don't know about you, Brittany, but all of my benefits do not roll over. What do I mean by that? My vacation days do not roll over. They are use it or lose it. And so if I do not use all of my vacation days by the end of the academic year, I just lose them. My sick days roll over, my vacation days do not. Same thing with CME money. So that stands for continuing medical education money. If I haven't used that money by the end of the academic year, it goes away. Same thing with CME days. If I have CME days that I haven't taken off for, I lose those things. And so one of the things that I try to strategically do is around May, I usually will email the benefits person at my job or wherever I'm working at the time. And I will say, hey, how you doing? Hope all is well. Just wanted to check in with you. Are there any vacation days that I have not yet used that I need to utilize by June 30th? Are there any CME days or CME money that I need to utilize before June 30th? And this year, I got some surprising answers. They were like, yes, Dr. Taylor, you got about 4 vacation days. You got about $1,000 of CME. It's like, what? Well, just cancel my clinic schedule for the last week of June. Just take off. I'm going to use those days. And I was like, what can I buy with CME money? Will y'all pay for iPads? They were like, Dr. Taylor, now we not buying you an iPad. Now, this needs to be medical education. I was like, okay, all right, give me a list of what I can buy. I'm bringing this up because I don't think I'm the only person. So if you have not done this, healthcare hustle tip is to email your benefits person and see if you are like me and where you have benefits that you've not utilized that you need to utilize before June 30th.
Yeah. And we opened up this podcast speaking about fathers. And I actually had a conversation with my dad yesterday, and he was mentioning that he had all of these days. And he's like, I don't want to give the government back that money. Like sometimes we think about it just as time. Oh, well, it's just one vacation day that it's okay if I don't use it or whatever. But remember the time value, right? There is time value that equates to a certain dollar value. And so if you think about that, if you work a shift, I don't know how much a shift might be for you wherever you are, but one shift for me is about $1,300. Would I wanna just say, "Oh, I'm gonna give my job $1,300?"
I get your sentiment, Brittany. Well, no, we definitely do not want to give them $1,300 or however much it is.
Yeah, so sometimes we degrade the value of our time, and really we need to hold on to time as more precious than money. So if you have a hard time saying, "Oh, okay, I'm going to take this vacation day," I want you to do a mini exercise to figure out how much they pay you. And remember, if they're paying you that amount, then they're making a lot more than what they're paying you. Would you want to give your boss or your hospital, whatever company you're working for, back that money? And the answer probably is no. So take your vacation days or the sick day or whatever it might be.
And now for our last segment, our fun money segment. I'll go first. So, Brittany, by the time this episode drops, it will be the day before my birthday. I'm so excited. So, originally, I was going to go to Cabo. I actually pushed back Cabo because I decided to go somewhere else and I wanted to be there for a friend. So, one of my best friends from residency is pregnant and
Aw.
she is having her baby shower on my birthday weekend. And I was like, girl, come on now. You could have let me have, no, I'm just kidding. I love her to death. I love her to death. And I knew she was pregnant, but she hadn't shared the news yet with everybody, so I couldn't talk about it. And I didn't know when the date of the baby shower was gonna be. But anyway, she finally, like, told people about her pregnancy, and she released the date of the baby shower. And, of course, it's my birthday weekend, and I was like, "Girl, it's gonna be in Cabo." And she's like, "Well, don't worry about it." She's being so nice. I was like, "No, I'm not gonna not show up. This is your first baby. Like, we're really good friends. It's a
Aw.
big deal." And also, selfishly, we have a lot of the same friends because we went to med school together. And so I was like, "It's your baby shower. The people you're inviting are people we both love. Like, I want to see them too, and they're gonna come to Atlanta, so I wanna be here when my friends touch down in Atlanta. It's gonna be a good time." I mean, yes, your baby shower, but also my birthday weekend, like, what? This is gonna be great. So I was like, "Okay, I can't be in Cabo and do all of this." And so I pushed back Cabo and decided to go spend a few days in Destin. So I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I'm originally from Northern Florida. I'm from Pensacola, and Northern Florida is like totally different from Miami, which is South Florida. But one of the great things that Northern Florida has is the best beaches. So this is the white sand, the clear water. It's just amazing. Northern Florida has the best beaches. And I used to go to Pensacola Beach because that's where my parents' home is, but Destin is only about 45 minutes away from Pensacola, and so I hadn't been to Destin in a long time. And so I was like, "Ooh, I could go to Destin, stay in a hotel on the beach." It's so close to my hometown that I can see some of my high school friends, go visit my parents' house, like, do all of this stuff for a few days. And because it's so close to Atlanta, I'll be back in Atlanta in time for my friend's baby shower and for my friends to come in town. And so that's my plan for my birthday. Hopefully it works out. It's so funny. Like my friends who are coming in town for this baby shower, they called me just like I was saying tips, stay with your friends. They were like, "Lisha, look, we coming in town." I was like, "Okay, okay, okay." I was like, "Yes, you can stay with me. Yes, we're going to have a good time." But I'm so excited about this if you couldn't tell from my voice. Cause one, my birthday, I love birthdays. And then two, I get to see my friends from like med school. So it's going to be
Yeah.
fun. I'm super excited.
Aw, well, I hope that it's full of joy and some memories that maybe you don't like wholeheartedly regret. Some memories like that. At least for me, whenever I get together with my friends, like, remember that time when we did this? It just brings us back to a moment of youth. So I hope you have some youthful stories to share. Well, my fun money is completely different. Sorry. This is one of the differences between our lives here. Mentioning my father every year. My father is so much of an athlete, although he was never an athlete growing up because my family grew up pretty poor. And so my grandmother couldn't afford the equipment, nor she didn't want to pay for any broken bones. This is the story that she tells me. So my dad really never played sports growing up, but he's always been pretty athletic as far as running. So every year he does this thing called a fight for air climb. It's with the American Lung Association. And he's like, "Baby, can you sponsor me this year?" So my fund money is making a donation on my father's behalf to sponsor him for this fight for air climb. I think they climb 90 flights of steps or something.
I'm sorry, he's doing this for fun? Oh, no, 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 it's charity.
It's charity. He does it every single year for fun. He trains for it. It's really interesting. My father is very similar to Brooke in some ways. So Brooke has this fun run that she's going on. We're doing this on Saturday. And she's like, Mommy, I need to go train for my fun run. My daughter is 5 years old and this is like a real race. But she's like, Mommy, can we go to the track? Come on, KJ, put on your running shoes. Come on, we got to go train for this race. So my dad trains for this thing and he does this every year for fun. It's fun for him. It's a donation to the American Lung Association. And here I am purchasing like t-shirts and things for Brooke's fun run. And she's also training for her race that's not really a race.
It's so cute though, but she probably gets the running from you, Brittany, because you run a lot. So I feel like she's seen you run and she feels like this is her opportunity to be like mommy because you run a lot. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is Brooke trying to like bond with you.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. She acts a lot like me. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I hope you don't do this thing. Of course, I love myself. But there are certain parts of myself that I really had to work on and I'm still working on. And so I hope that she gets the better version of me in many ways.
All right. Well, that's enough for today's podcast. Hopefully, you all enjoyed this listen and stay tuned. We will be back again to come to your ears next week.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Mind Starter Kit now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittne Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Pradeep Botto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.